I knew the bastard was going to say something stupid the moment he turned off his blurred beach background. There he was, Eric, the new VP of engineering, sitting smug in his glass-walled office like a villain from a mid-budget Netflix drama. Melissa, we've appreciated your contributions. He starts, voice smooth like discount bourbon. But we're pivoting to a more synergistic, cross-functional cultural model. Unfortunately, you haven't been aligning with that vision. Translation, you didn't giggle at his Slack memes or nod along when he called Kubernetes magic beans. And just like that, 3 years of building their back-end infrastructure from scratch got reduced to a goddamn LinkedIn buzzword funeral. The Zoom screen flickered as he kept droning, but Melissa had already stopped listening. She wasn't shocked. Not really. Just cold, like a steel pipe in January. This was the same company that threw office pizza parties when people hit burnout. The same company that bragged about flat hierarchies, but promoted frat boys named Trevor every 6 months. So she leaned in, kept her face blank, and said nothing. When HR joined the call, some woman named Jody with a voice like warm tofu, and asked if Melissa had any questions about the severance or NDA, she just said nope. Thanks. But here's the part Eric didn't know. He didn't know that the entire core infrastructure of VantaCore's proprietary platform, the identity stack, the build pipelines, the cloud provisioning, hell, even the admin dashboard themes were all nested inside a system she built. Layered, secure, containerized like Russian dolls. And all of it required one thing to function, her proprietary encryption key. Not a key stored in some cloud vault, not on a shared Google Doc. No, this was air-gapped. Generated on a Raspberry Pi Zero she kept taped under her kitchen sink, next to a bag of expired rice and a broken French press. It wasn't revenge, it was security. But revenge, that might just be a pleasant side effect. And when they pulled up the asset reassignment list and she saw the name Kyle Johnson Intern next to Project Lead, Melissa almost choked on her coffee. Kyle. The guy who once asked if rebooting the cloud was a real thing. The same Kyle who tagged her in a meme that said, "Senior devs be like, it worked on my machine and thought he invented comedy." Anyway, she stood up, closed the laptop, walked to her window and cracked it open. Cincinnati air in March smelled like wet mulch and false hope, but it beat the scent of corporate betrayal. Hey, real quick, 97% of you listening to this story aren't subscribed. I know, I get it, you're just vibing, lurking, inhaling stories like dollar store wine. But listen, I'm trying to hit my first 10,000 subscribers, and you hitting that sub button helps more than you think. Seriously, just one click, that's all. All right, back to the carnage. She didn't tell anyone what she'd done, didn't need to. She left her Slack with a wave emoji, exported her email archive to a secure drive, and nuked her credentials like a pro. No dramatic goodbye, no thanks for the memories post. Just silence, the kind that creeps in before a building explodes. That night, while watching reruns of Frasier with her cat, a notification pinged on her phone. New email. Subject, hi, from Kyle Johnson at VantaCore Solutions. Melissa didn't even open it right away. Just smirked, sipped her wine, and clicked mark unread. Because the storm hadn't hit yet, but it was coming. And Melissa, she had the only umbrella. Subject, hi. Time, 6:43 p.m. Sender. Kyle Johnson body, hey Melissa, sorry to bother you lol. Eric said you might have some info on where the Jenkins API creds are. Also not sure how to deploy the staging containers. I tried pushing to Docker Hub but got a bunch of errors. If you could help, that'd be awesome. THX, Melissa read it once, snorted, and closed her laptop with the same calm detachment you'd used to fold a napkin after watching someone step in dog shit. Jenkins was spelled Jenkins. He'd written API in lowercase, and he somehow managed to confuse Docker Hub with GitHub, and both with Heroku. The man had the technical clarity of a magic 8-ball in a blender. She pictured Kyle, hunched over his borrowed MacBook in that echoey open-plan office, probably surrounded by ring lights and cold brew dispensers, panic sweating in his VantaCore hoodie. She didn't reply, not yet. Instead, she leaned back in her chair and opened her secure archive folder. She had a clean copy of the entire VantaCore backend schematic in there, fully versioned, legally timestamped, encrypted tighter than a squirrel's butthole in January. Alongside it, she added Kyle's email, labeled it, contact attempt #1. She wasn't trying to be cruel. Not really. She just knew exactly what was about to happen, and it was better for everyone if she stayed out of the blast radius for a while. VantaCore's leadership had built their castle on her foundation, then kicked her out, lit a match, and handed the fire extinguisher to a guy who probably thought Bash was a startup. She cracked a smile when she imagined Eric pacing around the office with his fake Rolex and buzzword bingo cards, wondering why the product vision kept timing out at 502 errors. They didn't even know the key was missing yet. They were still in the denial phase, still assuming someone else would fix it, maybe that weird contractor they pulled from Upwork who called everything trivial. There was nothing trivial about it. The access points were sealed. The IAM roles were locked. The secrets vaults required a checksum chain only Melissa knew how to trigger. Even if Kyle miraculously found the command line, it would look like gibberish to anyone who hadn't built it. Melissa opened the email again a few hours later. The more she stared at it, the funnier it got. He'd added a smiley face at the end, like this was some group project in a freshman Java class and not a high-stakes enterprise architecture that handled sensitive client data across 6 continents. He didn't even attach logs, just vibes and a prayer. She shook her head and hit forward. Not to Kyle, not to Vantacore, to her offline vault. Subject, documentation trail Vantacore contact attempts attachment. Email 1 Kyle Johnson, a high-ML Melissa had spent years being polite in that company. Years downplaying how often she saved their asses, how many weekends she worked unpaid, how many quick fixes were actually full-scale code triage. They didn't want the real version of her, just the team player one, the quiet genius with no ego. Well, ego has left the building. Somewhere around midnight, she checked LinkedIn. Kyle had updated his title to lead DevOps Intern Vantacore Solutions. His profile banner was still one of those AI-generated tech cityscapes with glowing grids and abstract triangles. She clicked the little bell to follow his updates, not out of malice, out of curiosity. Watching a slow-motion car crash is horrifying, sure, but sometimes so informative. By the end of the week, 3 more emails would trickle in, each one a little more desperate, a little more panicked. But Melissa, she'd gone radio silent, because silence, wielded properly, is louder than any explosion, and these idiots were about to learn just how deafening she could be. By Thursday, the Slack channels inside Vantacore looked like a digital triage ward. Messages pouring in from every direction, engineering, product, marketing, all laced with that sweaty desperation people get when they realize the parachute was never packed. Jenkins pipelines were throwing segmentation faults. The staging environment wouldn't deploy past container hash 4. Backend logs were bloated with silent failures, memory leaks, and timeout loops Melissa had already warned them about in a 32-page handoff document they never read. Legacy services, most of which were running on a version-patched Linux fork Melissa had customized in 2021, were refusing to authenticate at all. Someone finally had the bright idea to hire a contractor from some dev shop in Austin. He showed up in their Zoom wearing a backwards cap and started sentences with, "This should be easy." 2 hours later, he was logged out of everything and marked unavailable on Slack. The truth was, Melissa hadn't broken anything. Not one line. What she had done was build a security-first infrastructure designed to self-isolate when touched incorrectly. Her design was paranoid by nature, encrypted storage volumes that required multi-layered passphrases and rotated salts, microservices that authenticated each other with ephemeral tokens tied to a private key known only to one machine, now powered off and living under her kitchen sink. They didn't even know there was a key missing. They just knew everything was broken and getting worse by the hour. By Friday morning, Melissa's phone buzzed with a new email. This time, it wasn't Kyle. Subject, platform malfunctions and potential policy violations from Compliance at Vantacore Solutions Body. Melissa, we have reason to believe that certain components of the system you oversaw may have been left in a deliberately non-functional state. This could be interpreted as a violation of your post-employment agreement. We request that you respond immediately to confirm that all proprietary systems have been left in operable condition. Failure to do so may result in legal action. It was the kind of email written by someone who wanted to sound threatening, but had no idea what the hell they were talking about. Melissa read it once, finished microwaving her lunch, and sat back down with her feet up on the table. She clicked reply. Subject, platform malfunctions and potential policy violations body. You had every opportunity to keep me. Good luck. Then she hit send, archived the thread, and went back to finishing the onboarding packet for her new job, one where the CTO actually read her Git commits and didn't try to explain how Docker was basically just Dropbox for code. Her old team at Vantacore, they were spiraling. VP had gone full conspiracy mode, ranting to anyone who'd listen about how Melissa had booby-trapped the codebase. He cornered one of the junior engineers in a meeting and demanded a list of everything Melissa ever touched, which, spoiler alert, was basically everything. Even the coffee machine API ran through a monitoring node she'd built one bored December weekend when the office intern accidentally wiped the breakroom access logs. Her name was being whispered like a ghost story in a kindergarten sleepover. Don't say Melissa's name too loud or the CI/CD demons will reawaken. And still, no one had found the missing key. They were rebuilding fragments, guessing at configs, reverse engineering their own damn product. It was like watching toddlers try to assemble IKEA furniture using a salad fork and a prayer. But Melissa, she stayed silent, not out of spite, out of principle. You don't slap someone for being stupid. You let gravity do its job when they jump off the roof insisting they can fly. By Sunday night, she got one last message from Kyle. Just a subject line and one sentence. Subject, please body, everything's broken. I don't know what to do. Melissa didn't open it. She just poured herself a glass of wine, opened a fresh page in her archive labeled Collapse Phase, and started recording timestamps. Because chaos wasn't coming, it had already arrived. Subject, urgent, can we talk? Time, 2:16 a.m. from Kyle Johnson. Hi Melissa, I know you probably hate me. I just wanted to say I'm really sorry. I didn't ask for this, Eric just kind of dumped it all on me. I'm in way over my head. Nothing works. Everything I try makes it worse. Can you please just tell me what I'm doing wrong, please? Melissa stared at the screen for a long while, chewing slowly on a bite of cold leftover pad thai. She didn't feel hate, not for Kyle, not even annoyance. What she felt was something colder, like standing outside your burned-down house with a cup of coffee watching the smoke rise, detached. Final. She clicked archive, no reply, not because she lacked empathy, but because the rot wasn't Kyle. It was Eric. It was the whole damn machine pretending to care about culture while gutting the people who actually made the product work. Kyle was just another well-meaning idiot tossed into the deep end by people who'd spent their careers faking competence with jargon and lanyards. By Tuesday, the emails got longer. More raw. Subject, please time, 4:37 a.m. from Kyle Johnson. Melissa, I'm begging you. I didn't know they were going to let you go. I didn't know about any of the systems or keys or the architecture stuff. Eric just said it would run itself and told me to stay agile. He literally tried to deploy to prod with a broken staging image today. I swear I'm not the enemy. I'm just trying to fix this before I lose my internship. Still, no reply. Instead, Melissa finished polishing her resume. She had 3 interviews lined up already. The first one with a clean, quiet startup in Boston that specialized in data ethics. She liked the founder's vibe, calm, respectful, ask smart questions. Actually read her code samples. She didn't even mention the Vantacore disaster unless asked. And when it came up, she described it like a weather event. There were management challenges. I built systems to be secure and robust. They weren't interested in robust. She didn't say they gave my entire kingdom to a panicking child, and now they're drowning in their own incompetence. But she thought it, often. Meanwhile, back at Vantacore, the tension was thick enough to butter toast. One of her ex-coworkers, an engineer named Priya, messaged her privately on Signal. Priya, hey, no pressure, but what the hell is happening over there? Melissa, just poor planning. Priya, understatement of the century. Eric's in full meltdown. DevOps is duct taping crap together just to fake uptime. That's when Melissa had the flashback. 6 months ago, she'd been in a meeting, just her, Eric, and the now-vanished IT lead, Jordan. She told them consolidating admin permissions into a single vault was a bad idea. Redundancy mattered. So did encryption hygiene. Eric had chuckled and said, Melissa, you're thinking like a bunker builder. We need agility. And now, that agile bunker was sealed shut, and they were rattling the doors like panicked raccoons trying to open a safe. External deadlines were starting to loom like storm clouds. Melissa knew the signs: marketing teams getting quiet, salespeople asking questions they never usually asked, product managers sending calendar invites titled Quick Sync. Vantacore was trying to keep up appearances, but there were whispers. Clients weren't getting demos. Test environments couldn't be replicated. Sandbox accounts kept erroring out with unauthorized deployment context messages, errors tied directly to systems Melissa had told them not to touch without training. And Kyle? Poor Kyle was now sending daily emails, each one more apologetic, more desperate, more vulnerable. One ended with, I'm not trying to take your place. I'm just trying not to drown. Melissa reread that line 3 times before closing the laptop. Outside, it was raining. Slow, steady. Cleansing, she poured herself a tea, sat on the floor with her cat, and exhaled for the first time in weeks. Because this wasn't just about a job anymore. This was about watching the people who thought they could erase her learn a very simple, very brutal truth. You don't fire the architect and expect the building to stand. The call came in just after noon on a Thursday. Unknown number. Melissa let it ring twice, then picked up out of sheer curiosity. She liked to know what flavor of idiocy she was dealing with before sending it to voicemail purgatory. Melissa, this is Karen from People Operations at Vantacore. Do you have a moment? People Operations. God, they couldn't even say HR anymore. Corporate euphemism bingo. All that was missing was someone offering emotional onboarding closure services. Go ahead, Melissa said, tone flat as drywall. We've been receiving troubling reports. It appears that certain core systems you managed are now underperforming or completely inaccessible, actually. Melissa sipped her tea. Several employees, engineers mostly, have suggested there may be inconsistencies in your handover. And well, if any sabotage occurred after your termination, that would constitute a breach of your NDA and possibly legal liability. There it was, the threat, wrapped in passive-aggressive corporate HR speak, like a knife made of lavender-scented foam. Melissa didn't scream, didn't argue, didn't bite. She just said, you're calling to accuse me of sabotaging a system you don't even understand, based on hearsay from a barely paid intern and a VP whose technical skills begin and end with clicking deploy on a dashboard I built. Long pause. Karen made a soft, throat-clearing sound, probably wondering if Melissa was recording. She was. Karen finally said, I just want to understand what might have gone wrong. Check your inbox, Melissa said, then hung up. She opened her laptop and forwarded the original document she'd titled, Vantacore System Transition Full Export Final. It had everything. Section numbered with appendices. Encryption key protocols listed. Version control logs, timestamped. Access procedures, detailed, backup policies, red flagged in bold with multiple warnings that no one ever implemented her recommendations to automate or externalize backups. She even included the Slack thread from 3 months ago where she told Eric, consolidating admin rights under one IAM role is reckless unless you want a single point of catastrophic failure. His reply, a gif of a shrugging monkey. She added no message to the forwarded email. Just attach the document. Let it speak for itself. The kind of mic drop you don't need to hear land, because you already know it cracked the floor. By the end of the day, her phone buzzed again. New message from Kyle Johnson subject, I'm so sorry, body. I didn't mean for any of this. I swear. I'm just trying to survive this internship. I haven't slept more than 3 hours a night in a week. They keep asking me to just fix it, but I don't even know what IT is anymore. Everything is crashing. The dev environment died yesterday. Now prod is returning blank JSON. Please, Melissa, I'm begging you. Just tell me what to do. She read it 3 times. Kyle was unraveling. His subject lines had gone from chipper to broken. He'd stopped using emojis. His punctuation was sliding. The only thing rising was the tension in his typing, like every word was flung from a man trying to swim in quicksand. Melissa didn't reply. Not yet. She took a breath and opened the spreadsheet she'd started weeks ago, Vanta Core Failure Timeline. March 3rd, laid off March 5th, first email from Intern March 7th. First internal service failure March 9th, contractor hired March 10th, contractor fired March 14th, HR call/legal threat March 14th, PM, full compliance proof sent each entry backed by receipts, emails, Slack threads, Git commits, timestamps that read like a quiet sermon titled, You Should Have Listened. And now the company was chaos. Red alert chaos. One of her old team leads messaged her anonymously through a Proton Mail alias. They lost a week's worth of client data. Backups failed. They're trying to spin it as a scheduled infrastructure reset. Kyle looked like he was going to puke in the stand-up. Melissa replied only once. Tell Kyle to stop blaming himself. This was never his system to fix. Because even now, even after the corporate gaslighting, the threats, the finger-pointing, she didn't want Kyle destroyed. She wanted the people who used him to get burned, not the matchstick. The audience, those watching from the outside, from within, from the sidelines, they weren't just seeing a laid-off engineer anymore. They were watching a silent hurricane. A woman wronged, disrespected, underestimated, and now immovable. Deliberate. Melissa wasn't sabotaging the system. She was the system, and they were just now realizing they never had the manual. The video came in as a silent message on Signal. No context. Just a file named Weekly Sync Hell Edition Mauve, sent by Priya with a single popcorn emoji. Melissa hesitated for half a second, then pressed play. It was a screen recording from inside Vanta Core's Thursday status sync. A virtual meeting Eric, the VP of Engineering, had pompously labeled the mission alignment checkpoint. 8 tiny zoom rectangles lined the top of the screen, most of them with frozen or blank expressions, like bored jurors on day 3 of a tax fraud trial. Eric was mid-sentence, pacing in frame like a divorced TED talker. This is insanity. We're 2 weeks from the investor summit and nothing works. Nothing. We had a working prototype, Melissa's prototype. Now it's just rogue legacy code strung together with spit. He threw down a dry erase marker that wasn't even being used. The camera wobbled. Kyle, poor Kyle, looked like a deer that had wandered onto a freeway. Pale, slouched, blinking like a man who hadn't slept in a week. His voice, when it came, was small but clear. It's not legacy code, it's structured, it's just secured. The systems aren't broken, we just don't have access. Eric spun toward him, full-blown fury in his eyes. Are you defending her? She left us this mess, Kyle winced. She documented everything. I've read the handover. She said not to consolidate permissions. She warned you. Priya's camera flickered briefly. Someone else coughed. A sales lead tried to cut in with a tone deaf. Should we circle back to the investor deck? No, Eric barked, slamming his hand on the desk. We are not circling back. We are fixing this now or we're all F. End of video. Melissa didn't laugh exactly, but she did smirk so hard she had to put her tea down. She watched the clip again, slower the second time. She noticed how Kyle didn't flinch when he defended her. He meant it. He knew. He'd finally seen the bones of the machine and realized it wasn't Melissa who broke it. It was Eric who threw out the blueprint. Melissa leaned back in her chair and exhaled, slow and satisfied. Kind of exhale you let out when the final piece of a puzzle clicks into place and you realize, yes, they're finally getting it. By 6 p.m., 2 more messages landed in her inbox. One was from a former DevOps guy, Louis, who used to argue about semicolon placement like it was a religious matter. Hey, I know things ended messy, but I just wanted to say, you were always 10 steps ahead of everyone. Should have said that earlier. The second was from someone she barely knew, Sharon, from the product team. Melissa had once stayed late to help her recover a corrupted user table 2 days before a demo. Just wanted to say I saw the meeting. You deserved better. Still rooting for you. Still rooting for you. That one hit a little deeper. Because for 3 years, she'd been the quiet one. The builder, the doer, not the talker, not the credit taker. Eric had stood on her architecture and pitched investors like he wrote the code. But now the platform was breaking beneath him, and he had no idea how deep the cracks went. Melissa opened the spreadsheet again. Collapse phase. A11, primary CI/CD pipeline, still failing staging environment non-functional VP meltdown, caught on internal recording 2 support messages from former staff. She added one more note to herself in bold. They're not scared of the system. They're scared because they finally realized who was holding it together. She didn't forward the video, didn't leak it, didn't even tweet a cryptic subtweet like accountability has entered the chat. No need. The truth was out, and it was spreading the way truths always do, quietly, steadily, like smoke under a door. She didn't need revenge. She had receipts and a front row seat. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and self-important. Certified mail. No return address on the front, just the telltale watermark of corporate desperation bleeding through expensive paper. Melissa rolled her eyes before she even opened it. Inside, 6 printed pages of lawyer-crafted groveling, dressed up in formal ambiguity. Somewhere around paragraph 3, buried beneath phrases like critical business continuity disruption and former employee engagement in good faith, was the admission. It appears a primary infrastructure access token remains unaccounted for. This token, or key, is required for full system functionality and is believed to have been integrated into a containerized authentication microservice under your purview. There it was, the ghost key, the one she'd built not for control but for security. Designed to sit silently inside a hardened microservice, isolated from all others, it validated every token issued by the central authority. If the key wasn't present, the system didn't authenticate. No login, no build, no deploy. It was the spine of the architecture, and she'd made sure it was untouchable, encrypted, air-gapped, stored on a device never connected to company networks. She read the whole letter while sipping coffee from her documentation is my love language mug. They weren't asking for forgiveness. They weren't offering compensation. They were just begging for access. Her name was nowhere near the key's runtime logic. No fingerprints. She'd scrubbed it clean. The legal team couldn't threaten her, not without admitting they didn't follow any of the basic handoff protocols she'd laid out months ago. They called it a token. They didn't even understand what it was. She placed the letter back in the envelope and slid it into her nice try folder. No reply, no statement, just silence. Melissa had better things to do. Her new job, an ethical AI startup based out of Boston, had flown her out for her first week of onboarding. First class, hotel with decent coffee. The CTO met her personally, shook her hand, asked real questions about her build philosophy. We want systems that last, he said, not just ones that impress in a demo. They gave her dual monitors, a quiet workspace, and get this, an actual team that listened. When she flagged a permissions leak in the onboarding API, they thanked her. Nobody gaslit, nobody shrugged. He fixed it before lunch. The difference was so stark it made her laugh out loud while filling out her benefits packet. Fully remote? Yes. Healthcare that didn't make her cry? Yes. An actual mentoring budget? Also yes. Pay 27% higher than Vanta Core. Title? Principal Systems Architect. She was finally treated like the person she'd always been, the one Vanta Core ignored until it was too late. That night, after a celebratory dinner with her new team, she checked her inbox. 3 new emails from Vanta Core. Subject lines growing shorter. Following up access token critical deadline please respond urgent system lock. She closed her laptop. Walked out onto her hotel balcony. Took a deep breath of Boston spring air, still sharp with leftover winter. She didn't feel angry anymore, not even smug. She felt whole. Because for the first time in years, she didn't need to fight to be seen. She wasn't explaining or justifying or cleaning up after other people's hubris. She wasn't warning them anymore. They'd ignored her when it mattered. Now they could sit in the dark because the ghost key, that lived with her. And she didn't owe them a damn thing. The rumors started as whispers on Twitter threads, cryptic posts from tech recruiters and ex-employees with popcorn emojis and phrases like Vanta Core 2.0 launched this Friday. Can't wait to see what breaks. Then came the LinkedIn posts, non-committal bragging from marketing interns about a bold new chapter and next-gen cloud experiences. Melissa read them all with a slow, growing grin. The Vanta Core investor demo was real. Friday, 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern. They were planning to showcase a rebuilt version of the platform, her platform, despite not having the master key. Despite months of failures, system lockouts, corrupted builds, and panicked Slack messages that probably read like live autopsies. And they still hadn't figured it out. Somewhere in a panic-filled conference room, Eric was likely sweating through his startup hoodie, convincing investors everything was under control while Kyle duct-taped whatever half-functioning services he could brute force into a demo environment. The problem was, the system didn't tolerate brute force. Melissa had built in an auto-lockout after a fixed number of failed access attempts. 5, that was it, 5 tries. After that, the platform would enter a hardened fail-safe mode. No more logging in, no more deploying, no more pretending. It would just go dark. Kyle must have known what was coming too. His final email hit her inbox Thursday night, 10:42 p.m. Subject, please body, I know I've said a lot already. I know I've probably made this worse. But I'm asking you one last time, please, just tell me where the key is. They're going to try to fake the demo tomorrow. If it fails, they'll blame me. I'm not asking for help, I'm just asking for mercy. Melissa stared at the screen for a long time. She opened a reply, typed, Kyle, this was never your fault. You were thrown into a fire started by people who should have known better. The key exists, but it was never meant to be held by people who saw my work as disposable. She paused, deleted it, typed another. The key is under a sink, taped to the back of something that smells like regret and instant coffee. Good luck. Deleted that one too. She sat back. Let her fingers hover over the keyboard, then closed the laptop. No reply, not yet. She walked to the window. The moon was low, glowing like a judgmental eye over the quiet Boston skyline. Her new office had sent her a welcome gift, a succulent in a ceramic pot that said you got this in cheerful sans serif font. It sat beside her new security badge, laminated, clean, unscathed by betrayal. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. Friday had arrived. Melissa walked to the fridge, cracked open a cold seltzer, and circled the date on the calendar in red marker. Demo day 11 o'clock a.m. She didn't need to watch the live stream. She already knew what was coming. She had the key. They had hubris. And the countdown had reached 0. The live stream kicked off at 11:01 a.m. sharp. A sleek countdown animation played across the screen, stock footage of server racks and digital waves, while lo-fi synth hummed underneath like a nervous heartbeat. Chat window filled with VCs, tech bloggers, and startup junkies, all ready to see the next industry disruptor in action. Melissa didn't tune in right away. She didn't need to. She sat in her sun-drenched kitchen, bare feet on the cool tile, stirring her coffee while the world she left behind marched toward its own execution. At 11:06 a.m., her phone buzzed. Priya, it's happening, they're live. She walked calmly to her laptop. Opened the link, full-screened it. On camera, Vantacore's CEO, teeth too white for someone who hadn't built a single line of code, stood in front of a screen plastered with buzzwords, synergy, velocity, integrity. We at Vantacore, he began, arms wide like a dollar store jobs, are proud to unveil our next-generation platform. Scalable, modular, future-proof. Melissa muttered, God help me, and took a sip. Behind him, the demo engineer, Kyle, was already sweating bullets, face shiny under studio lights. A second window showed a shared screen where the platform interface blinked to life. For a second, it looked like it was working. 1 second, then the first delay. The dashboard stalled during a load animation. Kyle clicked, waited, clicked again. The screen blinked black, then came the error, fatal error, encrypted kernel signature not found. Authentication failed. Root chain invalid. The CEO turned, visibly confused. Kyle. Kyle didn't answer. The screen flashed again. The UI collapsed. A gray screen overtook the dashboard, followed by System Lockdown Engaged. Unauthorized access threshold exceeded. The livestream chat exploded. Elmow whoops, did they just brick the demo? OMG, is that real? What the hell is an encrypted kernel signature? The CEO went stiff. The VP, seated off camera but partially visible in the corner, looked like he'd swallowed a snowball. His face had turned corpse white. Kyle stared into the camera like a man on the edge of the universe. Melissa opened her inbox. The draft reply to Kyle's final message was still waiting. She moved the cursor. No hesitation, no flair, just the truth. Your boss should have paid me what I was worth. She hit send. Then she closed the tab, didn't bother to read the headlines or the social media fallout. She didn't need to see the hashtags forming or the stock dip or Eric's impending scream fest behind some locked office door. She'd already seen it all before, in her head, on her spreadsheets. In the silence she'd weaponized with surgical precision. She stepped outside onto the balcony. The city was waking up around her. Soft light pouring over brownstone roofs, traffic beginning to hum, a world still turning without chaos clinging to its ankles. In one hand, a glass of wine. In the other, peace. Melissa leaned back in her chair, eyes half closed, and watched the sun rise over her new life. No vindictive grin, no mic drop, just the quiet satisfaction of a woman who'd finally walked away and let the fire speak for itself. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.